Hey guys. Alright, so for each unit we like to talk about how this unit relates to other units. Sometimes I've told you to go look in your book and I've given you an idea of what to look for. Sometimes I've done it for you. So I'm going to do a little bit more detail than maybe I've done in some previous units. You should have remembered to do this for blood and also for the heart. And I want to do this for endocrine. And endocrine is so complex, so I want to spend a little more time on this system connection than I have done maybe in the past, because you guys should be able to do this. This information is in your book. But before I relate this endocrine system to other systems, I also want to kind of give you what I call putting it all together. And so I found this picture from an older version of the textbook, an older version of our Pearson textbook. And I like it because it has everything on one page. And so this particular picture is showing you the hormones, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the other endocrine organs, and the hormones that they make. So this is that hypothalamic, pituitary, target organ axis. Okay, so these are all on one page. So you have your hypothalamus here. So it's kind of like that when I had the blood vessel one, when I kind of had that. It's very similar to that. It's just a different schematic of it. And here's your pituitary, here's your anterior lobe and your posterior lobe. And so what you can see is, remember, on the posterior side, the hypothalamus makes antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin, and it's stored in the posterior pituitary, and this shows you where its target is. Okay, so for antidiuretic hormone, the target is the kidney. Now you'll need to go back and find out, what does it do? What does it do when it gets to the kidney? This is just showing you where the target is. Oxytocin. Target is going to be the mammary glands and also the uterine smooth muscle. Now, we didn't talk about this, but males also respond to oxytocin. The ductus deferens, or you may know it as the vas deferens, and then the smooth muscle of the prostate gland, tongue-tied. The prostate gland also responds, so we'll talk a little bit about that in reproduction. So males also respond to oxytocin. So those are your two posterior pituitary hormones. Now in the anterior pituitary, remember, you have to have lots of inhibiting and releasing hormones coming down from the hypothalamus. They act on the anterior pituitary, and then it's going to relate to ACTH, TSH, GH, prolactin, FSH, LSH, LH, and MSH. And this shows you what their targets are. So the target for TSH is the thyroid, which produces another hormone, thyroid hormone. The target is the liver for growth hormone. It produces somatomedins. I think we also said insulin-like growth factors for bone and growth development, bone and muscle development. Prolactin, the target's the mammary glands. No other hormone is produced there. FSH and LH, they're going to target the testes and the ovaries, and you're going to get even more hormones: testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. We also have another hormone called inhibin. We'll talk about that a little more later, but there is an additional hormone there as well. You also have the direct control of the adrenal medulla. So remember, you get that production of epinephrine and norepinephrine. So this is just a really nice way to kind of have all of this on one page. I also wrote it kind of a little more simplistically because I know that slide's a little busy. So I've done it again. I've made a tree for you, and I've shown you the hypothalamus. These are the hormones that are made by the hypothalamus, okay? And in this case, in the posterior pituitary, they're made here. Same hormones are stored in the posterior pituitary, and this tells you the target. Here we have our releasing and inhibiting hormones. It tells you which hormones those affect in the anterior pituitary. It tells you which hormones are made by the anterior pituitary and where they go. So you have your target here, here, and here. And then it tells you, do these glands make another hormone? So in the case of the thyroid, it makes another hormone. Here's your target. The gonads, more hormones. Here's your target. The adrenal cortex, more hormones. Their targets. So for some of you, you may like the schematic that looks like this. I've tried several different ways to kind of get everything on one page for you. If it was me, I would take a blank sheet of paper and I would try to do this. I would try to come up with my own tree. Now, remember, every hormone doesn't fit into this tree because every hormone doesn't rely on the hypothalamus or the pituitary gland. Remember that? For example, calcitonin is made by the thyroid, but you don't need the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary for that. Parathyroid hormone from the parathyroid glands, again, no axis of the pituitary and anterior and hypothalamus. The pancreas makes insulin glucagon. The thymus makes thymosin. Pineal, melatonin. Heart, atrial natriuretic peptide. The kidney, renin and erythropoietin. Okay. Remember, you need to think about how the controls are. So are they humoral or neuronal? So for example, these are in response to calcium, so that would be humoral. All right, so think about that as you're making your notes for the exam. Think about how these are controlled. And then the adrenal medulla. This, remember the sympathetic nervous system? So you're gonna, when you need to pick that bus up, you need extra norepinephrine and epinephrine. Again, you don't have to have the hypothalamus anterior pituitary axis, but you do need to have your sympathetic nervous system activated to cause the adrenal medulla to release those hormones. So I've just tried to find different ways to have everything kind of in a couple of pages for you. So again, you may find a little better way of organizing it than I have. It's a challenge to try to organize the endocrine system. Believe me, I've tried several times. All right, so that takes me to systems connections. And remember, this is in your book. This is just a partial list. I'm just going to go through a few things just to make sure you understand what you need to be doing for each unit. So remember, with endocrine, we want to say how does endocrine affect these systems, and how do these systems affect the endocrine system? So what's the interrelationship between these two systems? So for example, integumentary. All right, so we know that the endocrine system makes things like androgens, those sex hormones, and those sex hormones are going to turn on sebaceous glands. That's why you get acne when you're a teenager. What does the integumentary system do for the endocrine system? Well, it protects it for one thing, right? It protects the endocrine system. So that's one of the jobs it does. Let's see, the skeletal system. What does the endocrine system do for the skeleton? Well, the skeleton, the endocrine system produces a parathyroid hormone, which plays a role in calcium balance, growth hormone, which plays a role in bone growth. What does the skeleton do for the endocrine system? Protection. Think about the cella turcica. Do you remember the cella turcica, which was up in the skull, and it was a little house for the pituitary gland? So protection. That's just one of the functions. Again, they're in your book, so I've got my book out. So if you, I was looking at just a few minutes ago to remind myself what to tell you guys. Muscular system. So growth hormone, thyroid hormone, and sex hormones. These all play a role in muscle development. We know that males have bigger muscles than females. What do the muscles do for the endocrine organs? Let's see, let's think about that. What would muscles do for endocrine organs? Well, they allow for movement of blood, so you have smooth muscle inside of arteries and veins, right? So smooth muscle. You have cardiac muscle, and both of those are needed to move blood. And where are hormones located? In the blood. So see, you can make these things tie together. The nervous system. So growth hormone, the same thing. Growth hormone, thyroid hormone, and sex hormones play a role in the development of these systems. And again, we know the nervous system has control over the endocrine system. The hypothalamus is part of the nervous system. Cardiovascular system. You have ANP and EPO. So these are hormones that are very important for the cardiovascular system. What does EPO do? Erythropoietin is the one that helps you make more red blood cells, right? So you need the endocrine organ EPO to make more red blood cells that you can then be transported through your cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system is important for the endocrine system because that's the only way to move the hormones through the body, because the hormones are in the blood. Lymphatics, hormones are transported into the lymphs. If you think about, remember we say lymphatic and immunity are kind of the same system. So thymosins are important hormones for maturation of your T cells. Respiratory, epinephrine is an important hormone for dilating bronchioles. Obviously, we need respiration to provide oxygen so that we can breathe, and our endocrine organs can function. So we have to have oxygen. Digestive, lots of digestive hormones. We'll do those in more detail later. But the digestive system will help the endocrine system by providing the nutrients that you need to build the hormones. So a lot of these hormones are peptide hormones, which means they're made out of amino acids. So that means you need to have protein in your diet to break those down to build up these hormones. Urinary system, hormones like aldosterone, erythropoietin, or hormones that are made by the kidney. But then these regulate kidney function, right? So we have a lot of connections between the kidney and the endocrine system. What else? Reproductive. So reproductive hormones like LH, FSH, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, prolactin, and oxytocin, those all play a role in reproductive health. And obviously you need to have a reproductive system so that you can make another baby that has an endocrine system. All right, so there's many ways to tie these together. I just want you, so you've probably noticed my system connections questions are usually not that difficult. I just really want you guys to start thinking how all of these systems work, because we are not independent organ systems. I mean, everything has to interact to maintain homeostasis. So just play around a little bit with this, with your different organ systems, and try to connect all your organ systems together. All right, so again, I did a little more detail than I usually do because the endocrine system is so complex. And that's all I've got to say about that today, and I will see you in another video. Thanks a lot.